Hello there, my name is Thomas, and I just really wanted to talk to you today about a really exciting project that I've been involved in. It's called the Alphabet of Britishness. This is a project that I've been running on my podcast. The podcast is available on iTunes, Spotify, and I've even been dropping them here in a playlist on YouTube. The Alphabet of Britishness is very, very simple in its idea. Every 2 weeks I do an episode. A is for something British, B is for something British. Actually, I've been doing this for a few months, and I really wanted to drop some kind of reflection, some kind of recap, some kind of analysis of what I've been doing. It started off, like many great projects, quite by accident. I'd been running a podcast on British culture. I wasn't sure what to do next, so I just put on my Instagram, what would you like me to talk about next? And I offered one piece which was on naval security, which was, to be honest, an old piece. I wasn't feeling very well, I was down with a cold. I thought, let me use an old recording. The alternative was, okay, maybe an explanation of what is Albion, because my podcast is called British Culture, Albion Never Dies. So I thought maybe some explanation of Albion if anyone wasn't quite sure what it meant. Well, the response was pretty overwhelming. Many more people voted than I expected, and they voted by more than 60% for A is for Albion, which I've even had printed on this lovely little mug I've designed. You can find a link to it just below. But I decided, to delve into what is Albion. And 2 weeks later, I opened up and said, okay, if A is for Albion, B stands for what? And then loads and loads of people started sending me suggestions. People started emailing me suggestions. Old friends got in contact. People I hadn't spoken to for a while. I started to be, almost, I hesitate to say overwhelmed. But by the second and third episode, I was getting 20, 30 people messaging me, telling me what they really, really wanted it to be. And it's put me in contact with some wonderful, wonderful people. I might be sending them gifts just like this in the near future. And I say it sparked some really interesting conversations. Just a word on maybe why I'm doing any of this. I am British. That much is probably obvious to you. But I haven't been to the UK for several years, and in fact, a lot of my adult life has been spent outside the UK. I lived in Turkish Cyprus for 7 years, I lived in China for 6 years, I've worked in Saudi Arabia, I've worked in Oman. Although many people describe me as very, very British, it's something that I often have a question about. What is Britishness? And this is something, actually, in a language centre I worked in the UK, we had students from all over the world. We once counted. In a week, we had students from over 100 countries, and we used to ask them, what is Britishness? And we got some really interesting and really fun ideas. I remember one of them regularly used to come up, which is that Britishness is having 2 taps. Most of the world has a mixie tap. Single thing that you lift up and, turn side to side for hot and cold. The UK very, very much loves having 1 tap too hot and 1 tap too cold. So that you can mix them perhaps in the basin and wash your hands that way. I don't like doing that. I like putting them both on and going, and that makes me happy. And it makes a lot of British people happy because, of course, historically, we had clean running water pretty early on. And when you heat water, well, it's not so clean as the cold water. So we like to have the cold water as the clean water and the hot water just as the hot water for washing in, not for drinking. But anyway, historic things like that really shape a country, and these funny little differences that I'd never think about, except that other people made me think about them. And as I say, living abroad, it's something that I've thought about more and more because people ask me all the time. Of course, when I lived in Turkey, I was interested to learn Turkish, and I loved it. I love learning about Turkish history, Turkish culture, and so on. It can be quite hard to find resources on just Turkish culture. It's not something that is commonly studied in the West, but I loved going into it. Of course, with China, there's a few more resources. You've got the Confucius Institute and so on. And again, learning the language, learning the local culture, it's been fantastic. You may see, again, in my YouTube playlist, I actually highlight videos by Kane. He's a friend of mine who's really helped me out. He's a really, really good guy, and his videos on Chinese culture are fantastic. But when I looked for videos on British culture, podcasts on British culture, really just for my own entertainment and to find out more about my own country, there was a real lack of material out there. I had to kind of generate stuff myself. When I was in China, I had a blog on the Chinese internet, which was all about British culture, and it went down very, very well, and I got lots of really good feedback from it. Again, they were really interested to learn, just as I was interested to learn about China, they were interested to learn about Britain. And so I started up this podcast. I didn't want it to be, something like Britain Never Dies or something like that. And just a word, the reason it's Never Dies is because I already had a James Bond account called Fleming Never Dies, which is, of course, a conflation of, Tomorrow Never Dies, one of my favourite films, and, by the way, where this tie is worn. Not the actual tie, it's just the same design from the same company. I couldn't get a screen-used one. But it's a screen-accurate one. As I say, it's from Turnbull and Asser, classic British institution. They dressed Winston Churchill, they dressed Ian Fleming, and they dressed Bond in Tomorrow Never Dies. And I really like that film. Funny enough, it's the one where Bond goes to China. Funny the things that affect us later on in life. Anyway, I really like that. So I set up one. I really feel Ian Fleming's character, James Bond, he's just carried on and on and on through different generations, right? So I set up this thing called Fleming Never Dies. I didn't want to do a Bond podcast because, frankly, that's been done and been done very, very well. There's brilliant James Bond podcasts out there, brilliant James Bond, fan videos, all kinds of stuff already out there. I think it's fantastic. So I only occasionally touch on it. But I really wanted one on British culture, and so I hit on Albion Never Dies. Again, I could have said England never dies, the UK never dies, or something like that. But the thing is that these are very specific, political entities, whereas Albion, it's the poetic word for England. It's not an England that exists. It's an England that exists perhaps in our hearts and minds, an England that exists as an ideal. It's an England that we'd all, I think, like to be part of. Again, it's very much from classic poetry. And it is one of the oldest words for what we now call the British Isles. So I just really like this idea, Albion Never Dies, because it really focuses on an ideal. Again, if you're looking for British culture, you can find videos. Normally it's in the 10 differences between the UK and the US, which is kind of a negative definition. It's telling you what we are not. I'm very interested in what we are. What is the focal point of Britishness? What are we all looking at, aiming towards? We all have an idea of what is Britishness, but it's quite hard to articulate. So again, I just threw it out there as a question. What would you like me to talk about? What does A stand for? What does B stand for? And these suggestions come thick and fast. I reply as quickly as I can. I reply to every message. I try and include all the suggestions I can. And often it's things that are really new to me, things that I haven't looked up for a long, long time. And I've been grateful for all of these suggestions, all of the corrections, or sometimes I put something out and I was a little bit wrong. People have very, very politely, again, it's a wonderful thing that you can be wrong on the internet and people are so polite and so nice about it when they correct you. And again, as I say, I spent a long time outside the UK. It's a joy for me to rediscover my own country. So I say it's been a real blessing for me. And now it's been several months. I want to start looking back. Again, as I say, I get these suggestions, I respond fast, I put out the podcast, but now I've had time to reflect and I've had time to think about it. And again, for Albion was the simplest one. It was just the one topic, the one idea, the idea of, it's an ideal. And ideals are like stars. We can't touch them, but they can navigate us, or we can navigate through them. So that was the initial idea, that Albion as a dream, as an ideal, because especially living abroad, I am an expat, you can get a very idealized vision of your own country. When you're living there, you're full of the frustrations of it, in any country you live in. It doesn't matter where you live, where you go, you end up with the frustrations of day-to-day life. You take yourself with you. But I think especially for an expat who's lived a long time abroad, you do end up with a slightly idealized version of your own country. But I'm kind of curious, what is that ideal? And especially, has that ideal changed? Is this an ideal that's shared? Has it ended up just being me and I'm no longer there and I'm not really exposed to what's going on? I'm very curious for this kind of feedback. So comment below. I appreciate, every single comment. I'm really interested in, the perception of Britishness as much as, can Britishness really be defined objectively? I'm not sure. I don't have the final answers. I have a lot of questions. I'll never say it's the final question because I always seem to have one more. But again, comment below. You can email me. Again, all the details are below. This series, I'm going to be looking back at all the Alphabet episodes that I've been running on the podcast. And you can find them here on YouTube. But I think it's time, a few months have passed, it's time to sit back, relax, and reflect. So join me in this little journey. I hope you enjoy it. Cheers.